Remember Toys R Us? That magical place where birthdays came alive and aisles seemed endless. Gone. Payless, where you got your school shoes. Gone. Red Lobster, endless shrimp, cheddar biscuits? Sinking. So what happened? Recession? Amazon? Millennials? Nope. The killer behind the curtain is private equity. And today, we're going to learn how a $4.5 trillion shadow industry quietly sucked the life out of your childhood and made billions doing it. So, what is private equity? At its core, it's a group of ultra-wealthy investors who don't buy stock in companies. They buy the entire company. And they don't do it to run the business better. They do it to wring every last dollar out of it. They call themselves stewards of growth. What they really are? Corporate house flippers with chainsaws. Here's how it works. They find a company you know, maybe even love. Then they buy it using something called a leveraged buyout. That's a fancy way of saying they borrow a ton of money to make the purchase and then stick the company itself with the bill. Imagine buying a house, taking out a massive loan, but your neighbor has to repay it. That's how leveraged buyouts work. It's not a bet on building something better. It's a bet that the company won't collapse before the investors cash out. And spoilers? A lot of them do collapse. Alright, let's walk through the private equity playbook, the greatest legal hustle you've never heard of. Step 1. They buy a company using borrowed money. Not their money, debt from banks, hedge funds, whoever's willing to lend. Step 2. They make the company itself responsible for repaying that debt. Yep, the business they just bought now owes billions it never asked for. Step 3. They start stripping assets. That means selling off valuable real estate, cash reserves, inventory, anything not bolted to the floor. Sometimes even things that are bolted to the floor. They pay themselves massive fees for consulting, special dividends, often funded by even more debt. All while the company's balance sheet starts to look like a crime scene. Step 5. They bail. Maybe they sell it to another firm. Maybe they dump it on the public markets. Or maybe they let it go bankrupt and walk away. And then, step 6. They do it all over again. With a new brand, new debt, and new victims. This isn't innovation. It's not entrepreneurship. It's not even capitalism in the way most people understand it. It's not a business model. It's a financial heist. Let's talk about Toys R Us. You remember that place, right? Giant aisles of action figures, bikes hanging from the ceiling, a giraffe named Jeffrey who practically raised a generation. It was more than a store. It was childhood. And then, poof, gone. So, what happened? In 2005, 3 private equity firms, Bain Capital, KKR, and Vornado, bought Toys R Us for $6.6 billion. But here's the catch. They only put up about 20% of that money themselves. The other 80%? They borrowed it. Then made Toys R Us responsible for paying it back. Almost overnight, the company was saddled with nearly $5 billion in debt it didn't choose, and it had to pay around $400 million a year just to cover interest. That's not money for new stores, not money for e-commerce, not even money for better toy shelves, just debt payments. And while Amazon was coming for their business model, while Walmart was slashing prices, Toys R Us was stuck trying to survive with a financial anchor around its neck. It wasn't the toys, it wasn't the kids, it wasn't even competition. Toys didn't kill Toys R Us. Debt did. By 2018, they declared bankruptcy. Over 33,000 workers lost their jobs, executives walked away, and the private equity firms? They'd already made their money. Next up, Red Lobster. Endless shrimp, cheddar bay biscuits, prom night dinners. It was the go-to fancy restaurant for Middle America. And then, slow decline, mass closures, and bankruptcy in 2024. What happened? Private equity happened. In 2014, a firm called Golden Gate Capital bought Red Lobster using, you guessed it, a leveraged buyout. That meant a mountain of debt. And to manage that debt, they pulled a textbook private equity move, a sale leaseback. They sold the land underneath hundreds of Red Lobster locations to a real estate firm for $1.5 billion. Quick cash, sure. But there's a catch. Red Lobster still needed those buildings to run the business. So now they had to lease the exact same properties, pay rent on restaurants they used to own, and worse, the lease included automatic rent increases every year. By 2013, Red Lobster was paying $190 million in rent annually, even while many of its locations were underperforming. That's like lighting money on fire with a side of shrimp cocktail. Add in inflation, seafood supply problems, and bizarre leadership decisions, and the business had no chance. They didn't just sell the land, they sold their future. Now, let's talk about Payless, the place where your mom got your sneakers that didn't break the bank. Affordable, everywhere, and weirdly reliable. Payless should have thrived in the era of budget-conscious shopping. Instead, it collapsed. Twice. So, what went wrong? Private equity again. In 2012, a firm named Bloom Capital and another called Golden Gate Capital bought Payless and merged it into a new entity. Not long after, they did something shady but legal. They made Payless borrow $300 million. Not to grow, not to expand, but to pay dividends to the owners. Literally, thanks for buying us, here's your money back. Then they started slashing costs. Marketing budgets? Cut. Website upgrades? Delayed. Innovation? Don't even ask. And while Zappos and Amazon were building fast, frictionless online shoe empires, Payless was still trying to update its POS system. In 2017, it filed for bankruptcy. In 2019, it happened again. They didn't lose to e-commerce. They lost to greed. 2 bankruptcies, thousands of stores closed, tens of thousands of jobs gone. And the firms that drained it? Already on to their next deal. You're probably wondering, how is this legal? How do private equity firms bankrupt beloved companies, cost tens of thousands of people their jobs, and still walk away richer? Because the game is rigged in their favor. Private equity doesn't make money when a company succeeds. It makes money the moment it buys the company. They charge management fees, transaction fees, and even monitoring fees. Yes, some firms literally bill companies for watching them fall. And they don't get paid like normal workers. They get something called carried interest, which means their income is taxed lower than yours. A nurse or teacher pays a higher tax rate than a billionaire partner at a buyout firm. Heads, they win. Tails, you lose. And if the company collapses, that debt, those layoffs, not their problem. They used other people's money to begin with. Here's the real twist. You might be funding this and not even know it. Most private equity money doesn't come from billionaires. It comes from pension funds, university endowments, and retirement accounts. That's right, your teacher's pension, your city worker's 401k, maybe even your college's endowment might be helping to bankroll the gutting of your favorite brands. These institutions give billions to private equity firms hoping for higher returns, and on paper, they often get them. But behind those returns are broken companies, lost jobs, and hollowed out communities. Wall Street wins. Main Street gets stripped apart. And because it's all wrapped in complex financial language, LBOs, credit facilities, dividend recaps, it sounds legitimate, sophisticated, necessary. It's not. It's just extraction hidden behind spreadsheets. So, can anything actually stop this? Yes, but it won't be easy. Private equity isn't broken because it's illegal. It's broken because the rules were written for them. Loopholes, tax tricks, debt loopholes. They're all features, not bugs. There have been attempts to regulate. The Stop Wall Street Looting Act tried to force firms to take responsibility for the damage they cause. Other proposals want to end the carried interest loophole or ban sale leasebacks in critical industries like healthcare. But guess who spends millions lobbying against those bills? Private equity firms. They're not just buying companies, they're buying influence. Still, there's hope. Some states are pushing back. Some unions are refusing to let their pension funds invest in firms with a record of mass layoffs or bankruptcy. Sunlight helps, so does outrage. Because when people actually understand what private equity is doing, they stop calling it investment. They start calling it what it really is: looting. Private equity firms don't build, they don't innovate, they don't care about brand loyalty, workers, or communities. They extract, they gut, and they leave. This isn't some fringe activity, it's happening everywhere. Cinnabon? Owned. PetSmart? Owned. 24-Hour Fitness? Yep. Even Morning Brew, the business newsletter? Partly owned by the same firm that helped kill Toys R Us. We're told this is capitalism, but real capitalism rewards value creation. This rewards value destruction. This isn't capitalism, it's cannibalism. And until we rewrite the rules, they'll keep doing it again and again and again. So next time your favorite brand disappears overnight, remember, it didn't just go out of style. It got bought, it got stripped, and someone got very rich off the wreckage.